voice.
Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn, and return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. We're on page 23, join us. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn, and return again, return again, return to the land of your soul.
Good Yontif.
Good Yontif.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Well, our prayers were answered. The WGA strike was settled.
I think in between services last night, so we
Something
did it
like that.
pretty well after the first service. You
I
guys,
know
it's you.
I read the lead up to that in the New York and Los Angeles Times, and they mentioned that they were trying to get the agreement done, before Yom Kippur, which certainly puts to rest the idea that Jews control Hollywood, for sure. So. I'm here every year, thank you.
Every week, actually.
Every week, but yeah.
More jokes on Shabbat.
And that was not written by a WGA writer, by the way. I just want to be clear. We have a beautiful, beautiful morning service. I do want to let you know that the prayer book you have in your hand is a prayer book that we're piloting this year. We did the same thing with Rosh Hashanah. The reason is that our movement is moving to another prayer book beyond Gates of Repentance. So it's going out of print. So we're going to need another prayer book one way or the other. And Rabbi Cantor-Wissett and Rabbi Rosenstein and we feel that we could do something unique and wonderful for our congregation. So you'll notice inside there may be a few grammatical mistakes, some punctuation mistakes, maybe some other issues with Hebrew. Please forgive us. It's because it is a pilot. We hope that by the Rosh Hashanah 2025, in 2 years, we're really hoping we will have in your hands a beautiful machzor that is ours and ours alone. So we hope you will indulge us for this year and next year while we make that happen. So in order to move forward, we're going to start with song, page 23, Ma Tovu.
Israel, Adonai ahavti mehom betecha umekom mishkan kevotecha mishkan kevotecha vani eshachaveh vechra hem lecha lifnei Adonai osi.
I invite you to join me and Rabbi Cantor Wissett on page 25. On page 25 at the top, we're going to read in a kind of responsive way this quote from Mishnah Peah. And one of the reasons we find it wonderful that it is in here is because our ark has this quote on it. It is unusual in that most arks around the world have the Ten Commandments. Sometimes they're symbolized just by the first 10 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, occasionally by the first word in the line. But our ark, and I think this was due to my wonderful predecessor, Rabbi Gore, decided to put these words from Mishnah Peah that really are the words we're going to chant here. So Rabbi Cantor Wissett's going to chant them in the Hebrew. We're all going to join in the English, and I invite you to join in with us.
אלו דברים שאין להם שיעור, שאדם אוכל פירותיהם בעולם הזה, והקרן קיימת לו לעולם הבא. ואלו הן, these are the obligations without measure. כיבוד אב ואם,
To honor father and mother,
וגמילות חסדים,
to perform acts of love and kindness,
והשכמת בית המדרש שחרית וערבית,
to attend the house of study,
והכנסת אורחים,
to welcome the stranger,
וביקור חולים,
to visit the sick,
והכנסת כלה וחתן,
to rejoice with bride and groom,
ולוויית המת,
to console the bereaved,
ועיון תפילה,
to pray with sincerity,
והבאת שלום בין אדם לחברו,
to make peace when there is strife.
ותלמוד תורה כנגד כולם.
But the study of Torah is equal to them all. We continue on page 27 as we rise, please.
יתקדש
We are in the middle of page 28. God, you open for us the gates of mercy, giving light to those who await your forgiveness. Your world is beyond our knowledge, greater than our understanding. Help us, God, to accept what we cannot understand, to love the beauty of creation without constantly trying to control it. Teach us how to bend with life, how to repair what we can repair, how to live with our questions, how to rejoice in wonders. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMa'orot, God of light and mercy, be with us this day. Page 29. On this day of repentance, we are reminded of your abounding love for us. Nurturer, our God, with great compassion do you care for us. Our source, our sovereign, just as our ancestors placed their trust in you, and you imparted to them the laws of life, so too be gracious to us and teach us. God, open up our eyes, bless us with an understanding heart to receive your teachings, to make them real by our deeds, and to pass them on to others. Blessed are you, Adonai. You have lovingly chosen your people Israel to receive this gift of Torah.
וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת, להודות לך יחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בעמו ישראל, באהבה.
Page 30.
בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 31. And what is my lifespan? I'm like a person gone out of Egypt. The Red Sea parts, I cross on dry land, 2 walls of water on my right and on my left. Pharaoh's army and his horsemen behind me. Before me the desert, perhaps the promised land too. That is my lifespan.
Moses and the children crossed the sea. They sang to you with songs of joy. Who is like you, Adonai? Mi chamocha ba'elim, Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Mi chamocha ba'elim, Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh.
Tzur Yisrael, Kuma, Kuma, Be'ezrat, Be'ezrat Yisrael, ופדאי חינמך יהודה וישראל גואלנו גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Tefillah on page 33. We remain standing.
Adonai Satai Tiftach, Adonai Satai Tiftach, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע מוריד אתה, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחייך מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים רופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך הגבורות ומי דומיה, מלך מלך טוב חיי ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך אב הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, לחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדירנו, אדוני אדוננו, מה אדיר שמך בכל הארץ. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. קדוש, 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 אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה, הללויה, הללויה,
We continue silently through page 38.
God bless you with all good. May God keep all evil from you. And may God fill your heart with wisdom and grace you with all truth. May God lift up God's merciful face and shine on you for all time. And may God grant you eternal peace. Yavarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha vehunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom. Shalom.
Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, barcheinu avinu kulanu kechad, ne'or panecha, ki be'or panecha natatta lanu Adonai.
Boker Tov, Shana Tova. Last week on Erev Rosh Hashanah, I spoke to you about the idea of obligation. If you were here, maybe you recall, if nothing else, that I showed a clip from an old TV show, 30-something. And that particular episode focused on the protagonist, Michael Stedman, played by Ken Olin, who was grappling with whether or not to give his son a bris. And there was a little bit of an issue between Michael Stedman and his wife, who in the course of the narrative isn't Jewish. Her name is Hope. And I spoke about the fact that there isn't any real good explanation at the end of the day to give your child a bris, to have a bat mitzvah, to have a wedding under a chuppah. All these things can be marked or done or signified or whatever you want some other way. There's no real, can't tell you that the Jewish way is necessarily better, but I made the point that it's our way. And therefore, by virtue of being part of the Jewish people, whether you were born into it or chose it freely, regardless, you have an obligation to the Jewish community. You have a responsibility to support the community because I made the point on Erev Rosh Hashanah that your presence here, your ability to sit here in this sanctuary, this beautiful sanctuary, the Gore Sanctuary, and come from your home, wherever you may live, on a beautiful Monday morning, and worship here unaccosted by the government, and sit here and do what you want, and even freely decide not to come. That privilege was given to you by the thousands of ancestors who sacrificed for you to allow you in this sanctuary, to sit where you are and to pray according to your conscience and to go home unencumbered with fear from the authorities. I was having lunch a while ago, and this is, rabbis a lot of times launch into stories that aren't really true. They're largely made up. This particular story is true. I wish I could tell you the name of the person that is at the center of this story. But that person is a member of this congregation, has been a member certainly well longer than I've been here. This person has raised kids in this congregation. And we were sitting at lunch, and this person raised to me this sentiment. Josh, I don't understand. I have so many friends who belong to Temple Judea, and they left the minute their youngest child became bat or bar mitzvah. I don't come to synagogue very often. In fact, I don't come to synagogue on the holy days. I often watch from my house. And this is a person who's been very involved in our leadership in one way or the other, but just being honest with me. And this person said to me, I don't understand how people can do that. I feel a sense of obligation to support the synagogue, to be part of the community, even if I don't necessarily come. I want to know that the synagogue is there in case someone needs it. I didn't put these words in this person's mouth. This is what this person said to me. This is what this next moment is about. It's about obligation. Now, there was a time for about 1,000 years when Jews lived primarily in Europe. If you don't know, Jews, like Christians, were taxed by the government to support their community. We don't have a tax. That doesn't mean you don't have an obligation. You have an obligation to support this community because people before you, in some cases, some of you are sitting here, some cases, some of you are young enough that there were people before you who, in 1952, decided there was a synagogue needed in the San Fernando Valley, and they set about building Temple Judea, many of them of an age knowing they wouldn't see it come to be what it is now. But they did what they had to do to make it possible for you to sit here, to make it possible for your children in many of your cases, as I'm looking around the room, to make it possible for your grandchildren to sit here and listen to this beautiful service, have your spirits lifted by our wonderful music and brilliant liturgy, educate your children, allow this synagogue to support the many, many myriad activities and causes in the community that we support. So now we ask you, as is the tradition of Temple Judea, it's going to be people coming around with an envelope. We're going to ask that you give, hopefully because you want to, hopefully because you think Temple Judea is a philanthropy, and that's what we are. We are a philanthropy. That you give from your heart. But if that doesn't get you over the threshold, please remember that you have an obligation to do for us now and to do for others later what was done for you in so many generations before. Our ambassadors are going to be distributing, if you don't have them already, they'll be delighted to give you an envelope and a pen. We have a QR code that's available. There are QR codes. If you don't know what a QR code is, it's that square box that you hold your camera up to and takes you to a web page. There are QR codes in your pew bulletin. There are QR codes all around the building. There's a lot of opportunity if you don't have the ability to write a check or do what you need to do now. You can find a way to do it. I hope, pray, because we are counting on this being successful. I hope and pray that you'll take the time to think about what has been done for you and do in turn for others. Thank you.
Be the light inside the darkness, be the hope, burning bright into the night, be the voice, for those who cannot raise it, be the one who leads the way, through the world's darkest days, be the light, be the light, be the light.
When days feel long and all that's left inside you, our darkest days reach for the light to guide you. The miracle of change begins with sparks of light we find within that shine. If we come close together, we will see a people strong, a shared humanity, to transform darkness into light, to lead with love instead of might. We shine, we shine.
Be the light inside the darkness, be the hope, burning bright into the night, to be the voice, for those who cannot raise it, be the one who leads the way, through the world's darkest days, be the light, be the light, be the light. Be the light, be the light, be the light.
We turn now to Aliyot and Torah. You will find it on page 40. To assist us with the reading of Torah, we'd like to call upon those who will be opening the Ark, Barry and Greg Gervin, Glenn and Bonnie Summer, and Carrie Levison, to please come up. As well, those who will be carrying Sifrei Torah, Jeanette and Mark Fishman, Harvey and Harriet Bookstein, and Joanne and Ron Kramer. Please, at this time, that group I just called, come forward. We are on page 40. Please rise.
Shema kolenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice.
Avinu malkeinu chatanu lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have sinned against you.
Avinu malkeinu chamol aleinu ve'alol aleinu ve'tapenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and on our children.
Avinu malkeinu kalei dever ve'cherev ve'ra'av me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, make an end to sickness, war, and famine.
Avinu Malkeinu, kale kol tsar umastin ma'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, make an end to all oppression.
Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer chaim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us for blessing in the book of life.
Avinu Malkeinu, chadesh aleinu shana tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the new year be a good year for us.
Avinu Malkeinu, malei adenu mi birchotecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, fill our hands with blessing.
Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu v'anenu, ki ein banu masim. Asei manu tzedaka v'chesed ve'hoshienu.
Avinu Malkeinu, be gracious and answer us, for we have little merit. Treat us generously and with kindness, and be our help.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chaleinu Aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaleinu Aleinu, ki ein banu masim. Asei imanu,
all of the information about the Torah reading, starting on page 43, the blessing before the reading. There's the Torah portion that we're reading. If you turn to page 45, you'll find the blessing after the reading. We have wonderful people who are going to read the Torah, and we have wonderful people who are going to be called up for the honor of the Aliyah, chanting the blessing before and after the Torah. For the first Aliyah, for this Yom Kippur morning, we'd like to call upon Brad Glassman, Craig Erwick, and Mark Levinson. Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten Torah.
Amen.
Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Adonai Elohechem Rashechem Shiftechem Ziknechem Veshotrechem Kol Ish Yisrael Tabchem Neshechem Vegercha Asher Bekerev Mechanecha Mechote Vatsecha Ad Shoev Memecha.
Le'avrecha Ivrit Adonai Elohecha Uvalato Asher Adonai Elohecha Korit Imcha Hayom.
Leman Hakimotcha Hayom Lo Le'am Ve'hu Yelecha Elohim Ka'asher Diber Lach Ve'ka'asher Nishba Lavotecha Le'Avraham Le'Yitzchak U'Yaakov.
Velo item levadhem anohi koret et habrit hazot ve'et ha'ala hazot ki et asher yeshno po imanu omeid hayom lifnei Adonai Eloheinu ve'et asher enenu po imanu hayom.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet. V'chayei olam nata betukenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten Torah.
Amen. Yasher Kovachem.
For the next Aliyah, Aliyah number 2, we'd like to call upon Aaron Littman and Nancy Littman. Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten Torah.
Amen.
Ki hamitzvah hazot Asher Anohim etzavecha hayom lehanotzi mimcha velo rihoka hi. Lo vashamayim hi lemor mi ya'alelanu hashamayimach v'chahem halanu v'ashmienu ota v'nasena.
Velo me'emer layam hi lemor ya'aver lanu el evar hayam v'kichachecha lanu v'yish me'anu ota v'nasena.
Ki karov elecha hadavar meod beficha uvilvavcha lasoto.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
So this next aliyah requires you to do a little bit of thinking. And we found over the years that it really is probably one of the most meaningful traditions we have on Yom Kippur. It is traditional in synagogues that the Sheberach is done with the Torah reading. We've moved it to Friday night for the most part, but that's typically the time when it's done. And if you have grappled with an illness, it's traditional on a Shabbat morning that you'd be called up to the Torah for a Sheberach while standing at the Torah, perhaps having an aliyah. So what we do here at Temple Judea is that we ask you to think about whether you've really grappled with a health issue. It doesn't have to be serious. It only has to be serious to you. And it can be a health issue. It can be a physical issue. It can be a spiritual or emotional issue. But if you are feeling that you are ready for the renewal of the new year, that you're feeling that a Sheberach at this time, at this moment in our liturgy, at this moment in our liturgical calendar, at this moment as Ne'ilah is just a few hours away, that this would help lift my spirits and mark or provide a demarcation for you between the year past where maybe illness was just always at the forefront of your mind to the hope that maybe the new year, 5784, will be a year in which that illness is, if not completely in your rearview mirror, at least begins to recede. And if you have someone close to you, maybe you've had the good fortune not to be struggling with that illness, but perhaps someone close to you, a spouse or perhaps a child or anyone, and you would like to come up on their behalf, we invite you to do that. So for the third aliyah, we call all of those in our congregation for whom a Sheberach would be appropriate.
ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
ראה נתתי לפניך היום את החיים ואת הטוב ואת המוות ואת הרע אשר אנוכי מצווך היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך ללכת בדרכיו ולשמור מצוותיו וחוקותיו ומשפטיו והיית ורבית ובראך אדוני אלוהיך בארץ אשר אתה בשה לרשתה.
ואם יפנה לבבך ולא תשמע, ונידחת והשתחווית לאלוהים אחרים ועבדתם. הגדתי להם היום כי אבות טוב אדון, לא תאריכון ימים על האדמה אשר אתה עובר את הירדן לבוא שמה לרשתה.
העידותי לכם היום את השמיים ואת הארץ, החיים והמוות נתתי לפניך, הברכה והקללה, ובחרת בחיים למען תחיה אתה וזרעך, לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך, לשמוע בקולו ולדבקו, כי הוא חייך ואורך ימיך לשבת על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיך, לאברהם, ליצחק ויעקב, לתת להם.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
רפאנו אדוני ונרפא, הושיענו וניוושע, אל קרוב לכל קורב, אך קרוב לרעיו ישור. We pray for healing of the body. We pray for healing of the soul, for strength of flesh and mind and spirit, הושיע את עמך וברך את נחלתך וראם ונעשה מר העולם. מי שברך אבותינו, מי שברך אמותינו, אנא אדוני הושיענה. We pray for healing of our people. We pray for healing of the land and peace for every race and nation, every child, every woman, every man. Oh, please heal us now. רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף, רפואה שלמה. אלנה רפאנה. Oh, please heal us now. רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף, רפואה שלמה. Heal us now. Heal us now. Heal us now.
The honor of Hagbah is, we call upon Kurt Jacobson to assist in the dressing of the Torah, the Glilah. We call upon Jody Jacobson and Rachel Cohen. And for the honor of opening the Ark as we return the Torah to the Ark, Jonathan and Maggie Cole, Greg, Monique, and Katrina Franklin, and Michelle and Jarrett Lewis. Please come forward, and I invite the congregation to rise, please.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. יאללה לי 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 לי, יאללה לי 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 לי, יאללה לי 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 לי, יאללה לי לי לי. We should hear the whole room singing. It's at every bar mitzvah. Has anybody here been to a bar mitzvah? You know this song. Yalla la 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 la. Yalla la 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 la. Yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la. Behold, a good doctrine has been given to you. It is a tree of life to those who hold it fast, and all who cling to it find happiness. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths All its paths are peace.
Hashivenu Adonai Elecha, Hashivenu v'nashuva, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu kekedem.
We continue in our Machzor on page 50 as we begin the Unetaneh Tokef.
gesagt.
On page 50, we read responsibly. Let us proclaim the sacred power of this day, both awesome and full of dread. On this day your dominion is honored, your throne established. There in truth you reign. You are judge, and all power is with you. You write and you seal, you record and recount. You remember deeds long forgotten. You write in the book of our days, and what is written there will be proclaimed in our lives, for we are in your hands. We are in awe and filled with dread. Among the sounds of the shofar, we yearn to hear a still small voice, the voice of angels who declare, "This is the day of judgment. All who dwell on earth stand arrayed before you, as the shepherd seeks the flock and counts the sheep as they pass under the staff. So do you number and consider every soul and set the bounds of every life, decreeing its destiny." When Rosh Hashanah is written, on Yom Kippur it is sealed. How many shall pass on? How many shall come to be? Who shall live and who shall die? Who shall see ripe age and who shall not? Who shall perish by fire and who by water? Who by sword and who by beast? Who by hunger, who by thirst? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning?
Mi va'esh u'mi va'mayim, mi va'cherev u'mi va'chaya, mi va'rav u'mi va'tzama, mi va'rosh u'mi va'maged. בראש השנה יקצרו, וביום צום כיפור יחצרו.
Who shall be secure and who shall be driven? Who shall be tranquil and who shall be troubled? Who shall be poor and who shall be rich? Who shall be humbled and who exalted? But we trust that repentance, prayer, and tzedakah will temper the severity of the decree.
מי ינוח ומי ינוח, מי ישקיט ומי יטורף, מי ישלב ומי יתייסר, מי עני ומי עשיר. בראש השנה יכתבון וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. מי יושפל ומי יחיה ומי ירום. בראש השנה יכתבון וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. בראש השנה יכתבון וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. ותשובה ותפילה וצדקה מעבירים את רוב הגזירה.
We continue together at the bottom of 51. Our origin is dust, and dust will be our end. Each of us is as grass that must wither, a wind that passes by, a flower that will fade, a dream soon forgotten. But you are everlasting, and you have linked our name to yours, the vidui at the top of 52. Adonai, our God, is merciful and gracious, endlessly patient, loving, and true, showing mercy to thousands, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin, and granting pardon. Hear our voice, Adonai, our God. Be kind, sympathize with us. Willingly and lovingly accept our prayer. Turn us toward you, Adonai, and we will return to you. Make our days seem fresh as they once were. Do not cast us away from you. Do not take your holy presence from us. Do not cast us away as we grow old.
Do not desert us as our life ends.
Do not abandon us, Adonai, our God. Do not distance yourself from us. Give us hope, be our help and comfort. Hear our words, Adonai, and consider our inmost thoughts. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer.
Shema koleinu v'nashuva, v'nashuva. Shema koleinu v'nashuva. That's the whole thing. Sing it with me. Shema koleinu v'nashuva, v'nashuva. Shema koleinu v'nashuva. We will return to you. Shema koleinu v'nashuva, v'nashuva. Shema koleinu v'nashuva. Hear our voice. We will return. We will return. Hear our voice. We will return to you. Hear our voice. We will return. We will return. Hear our voice. We will return to you.
We are on page 53, another element to the vidui, a shamnu, literally a liturgy composed of a litany of our sins. Let us read together, beginning at the top of 53. Our God, God of our mothers and fathers, grant that our prayers may reach you. Do not be deaf to our pleas, for we are not so arrogant and stiff-necked as to say before you, our God and God of all ages, we are perfect and have not sinned. Rather do we confess, we have gone astray, we have sinned, we have transgressed.
Ay, 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 ay. Ashamnu,
Ashamnu,
Bagadnu,
Bagadnu,
Gazalnu,
Gazalnu,
Dibarnu Dofi,
Dibarnu Dofi,
ay, 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 Hevinu,
Hevinu,
Vehirshanu,
Vehirshanu,
Zadnu,
Zadnu,
Hamasnu,
Hamasnu,
Tafalnu Shaker,
Tafanu Shaker,
ay, 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 Ya'atznu Ra,
Ya'atznu Ra,
Kizavnu,
Kizavnu,
Latznu,
Latznu,
Maradnu,
Maradnu,
Niatznu,
Niatznu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Pashanu,
Pashanu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu.
Kishinu oref.
Kishinu oref.
Ay, 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 Rashanu.
Rashanu.
Shichatnu.
Shichatnu.
Tiavnu.
Tiavnu.
Tainu.
Ta'inu.
Titanu.
Ti'itanu.
Ay, 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 ay.
Bottom of page 53. We abuse, we betray, we are cruel, we destroy. We embitter, we falsify, we gossip, we hate. We insult, we jeer, we kill, we lie, we mock.
We neglect, we oppress, we pervert, we quarrel.
We rebel, we steal, we transgress, we are unkind.
We are violent, we are wicked, we are extremists.
We yearn to do evil, we are zealous for bad causes.
For
all these sins, O God of mercy, forgive us, pardon us, and grant us atonement. Page 54. V'al kulam Eloah slichot salach lanu mechal lanu kaper lanu. For all these sins, O God of mercy, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement. Al chet shechatanu lifanecha b'nitiyat garon. For the sins we have committed against you through arrogance and selfishness.
For being obsessed with our own concerns, for choosing rudeness over common courtesy, for loving our egos.
Al chet shechatanu lifanecha b'hona'at re'ah. For the sins we have committed against you by defrauding others.
For using people in pursuit of our ambitions, for manipulating the love of others, for gossiping.
Al chet shechatanu lifanecha b'chachash uvechazav. For the sins we have committed against you through denial and deceit.
For creating theories to rationalize our behavior, for faking emotions for our own benefit, for using the sins of others to excuse our own, for claiming that ends justify the means.
Al chet shechatanu lifanecha b'neshech uvemishte. For the sins we have committed against you through greed and overindulgence.
For using force to maintain our power, for poisoning our planet, for remembering the price of things but forgetting their value.
V'al kulam Eloah slichot salach lanu mechal lanu kaper lanu. Al chet shechatanu lifanecha be'imutz halev. For the sins we have committed against you through hardening our hearts.
For accepting poverty as inevitable, for staying silent when we should speak out, for resenting the young and ignoring the elderly, for abandoning proper outrage.
Al chet shechatanu lifanecha b'chanufa. For the sins we have committed against you through hypocrisy.
For condemning in our children the faults we tolerate in ourselves, for condemning in our parents the faults we tolerate in ourselves, for neglecting our promises.
Al chet shechatanu lifanecha b'tzarut ayin. For the sins we have committed against you by narrow-mindedness, for passing judgment without knowledge, for denying our baseless hatreds. Al chet shechatanu lifanecha b'gilui arayut. For the sins we have committed against you through sex and love,
For
confusing love with lust, for pursuing fleeting pleasure while disregarding lasting hurt, for withholding affection to control the ones we love. Al chet shechatanu lifanecha b'vidui peh. For the sins we have committed against you through empty confession. For all these, O God of mercy, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
Ve'al
continue in silence for a few moments.
Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn, and return again, return again, return to the land of your soul.
Shana Tova. 75 years ago, when Israel was born, no one could imagine that Israel would divide Jews. Certainly, if you're following the narrative of Jewish history, you could easily have predicted that non-Jews would ceaselessly criticize, undermine, berate, and attack Israel. You didn't even have to pay close attention. It was as predictable as the rising of the sun, but no one, not even the most intelligent observer in 1948, could predict that we would find ourselves where we are now. Where are we? We're at a place where many of you are likely wishing I would speak about anything other than Israel. Some of you are thinking that Israel is a political subject and you don't want politics from the pulpit. There was a time when speaking about Israel was a layup for a rabbi. A sermon about Israel made everyone feel good. That time has passed. We're at a place where many Jews don't want to travel to Israel for ideological reasons. A moment in which Jews are reconsidering their support for Israel, not only in terms of traveling to Israel, but also in terms of giving to Israel. I know in speaking with some of my colleagues, they feel Israel is so radioactive that they simply don't talk about it, and certainly not from the Bima. However, I believe that part of my responsibility as a rabbi, as the senior rabbi giving a sermon on the holy days, is to address the most important Jewish issues of the day. And at this moment, at this day, on this Yom Kippur, there is no more important Jewish issue than Israel. And to ignore the crisis in Israel at this moment, for me, would be a dereliction of duty. I ask that you listen with an open mind. I remember with great clarity, as I'm sure so many of you do as well, going to synagogue on the Yom Kippur War. The fate of Israel was literally teetering. That morning, the Jewish world didn't know the answer to this question. Would there be an Israel or not? Would Israel be overrun by its enemies or not? The Jewish world was holding its collective breath that day. It didn't matter if you were a Jew who knew Torah or had never set foot in the synagogue. You could be a Jew with no connection whatsoever to Judaism or the Jewish community. You were holding your breath. It was a different time. Today, if you pause to think about it, Yom Kippur, 5,784, we are just 2 weeks shy of the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. The future of Israel is in doubt 50 years later, not because the enemies of Israel are gathering on our borders, but because the enemies of Israel are sitting in the Knesset on the precipice of transforming Israel into a country that is unrecognizable to the vast majority of Jews around the world. The greatest threat facing Israel is its government. Jews in the diaspora can no longer support Israel without asking which Israel they are supporting. This is a quote from an article by Maddie Friedman, Yossi Klein Halevi, and Daniel Gordis. Maddie Friedman is a journalist. He previously worked for the Associated Press, and he, while working for the Associated Press, wrote a now viral essay about the AP's bias against Israel. Daniel Gordis is a conservative rabbi who made Aliyah about 25 years ago. He is known, among other things, for calling Peter Beinart and Rabbi Sharon Brous traitors to the Jewish people and the state of Israel. Hardly a left-wing position. Yossi Klein Halevi, in his youth, was a follower of Meir Kahan. These are not enemies of Israel or left-wing nutcases by any stretch of the imagination. You cannot discount their views because you don't agree with what they represent politically. They are not, by any stretch of the imagination, on the left of the political spectrum. They are all North American, politically centrist Olim, deeply committed to the state of Israel. So what are they talking about? They're talking about a series of reforms and changes to the basic laws of Israel and long-standing precedent that would consolidate the control of the executive, judicial, and legislative branches of government into the hands of the Prime Minister of Israel. To understand this, we need to understand that the Israeli form of representative government is much, much different than we have here in the United States. There is no constitution. There is no formal separation of powers. Israel has a unicameral legislature. By design, all of the legislation proposed by the government is enacted into law with very few exceptions. By design. The Prime Minister of Israel always has controlled the legislative and executive branches. The only break on this power has been the judiciary. To eviscerate the judiciary, again, the words of Maddie Friedman, Yossi Klein Halevi, and Daniel Gordis, in this manner is to transform Israel from a democratic state to a one-party state that could, if they wanted to, unilaterally suspend elections completely. What is being done? Among the pending legislation, not pie-in-the-sky wishful thinking, consolidate the control of the judiciary under the control of the Prime Minister and give the Prime Minister the right to essentially appoint and fire all judges at any time. Give the Knesset, which itself is under the control of Prime Minister, the right to override the decision of any court in the country, including the Supreme Court. Give rabbinic courts expanded control over many domestic issues that will have a deleterious impact on women and homosexuals, among other groups. Force secular institutions, such as hospitals, to follow Orthodox Jewish law. Make changes to the law of return that will impact many of you sitting there. Reduce, eliminate, or make it otherwise impossible for Reform and conservative synagogues and institutions to operate. This is only a partial list of the kinds of changes the governing coalition intends to implement. And as I said, this isn't a wish list. It's not pie in the sky. It's not some party's platform that's shoved into a drawer in some anonymous office in some anonymous building. It's in the legislature as pending legislation to be voted upon. The three thinkers I've referenced say, taken together, these changes will eviscerate Israel's democratic identity. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he'll tell you that what's happening is merely that duly elected members of the Knesset are changing laws to reflect their election mandate. The reality is his governing coalition does not represent a majority of the Israeli electorate. In terms of the popular vote, Netanyahu's coalition represents about 48% of the electorate. And more to the point, the two people with the most influence in the government, Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, together, they represent two parties. Their parties received 10% of the vote. That's significantly less than the centrist party, which isn't in government, which received 17% of the vote. Many in Netanyahu's own party, that's the party of Menachem Begin, disagree with him. But given the way the government works, they cannot vote against proposals put forward by the leader of the party. Thus, the idea that Netanyahu's coalition is merely implementing the will of the majority is, at best, disingenuous. What is true is the very real sense of marginalization and prejudice felt by the extremists in Netanyahu's coalition. What is true is that for most of Israel's 75 years, Israel was governed by Eastern European, secular, highly educated, relatively affluent men without regard to the needs of a growing Jewish population from Arab states such as Morocco and Yemen, and a growing population of religious Zionists from around the world. These are people with legitimate concerns who feel they have been excluded, in many cases correctly, from the democratic process. But the way to address their grievances is not to force a widely unpopular agenda into law against the views of the majority. A tyranny of the minority is not the answer to Israel's problems. I would hope that everyone in this room, regardless of where you place yourself on the American political spectrum, can agree that in Israel in which fundamentalist Judaism is enacted into law, an Israel in which the entire beach in Tel Aviv is segregated by sex, as is all public transportation, an Israel in which the rights of Reform and conservative Jews are either drastically curtailed or eliminated, an Israel in which secular institutions and businesses are forced to follow a particular interpretation of Jewish law, and an Israel in which fundamentalists, that's what they are, control most aspects of daily life, that is not the Israel we want and that many of us worked for. Please understand, a significant majority of Israelis and Jews in the diaspora have no issue if parts of the beach are designated for those Jews and Muslims, of course, that want to have segregated areas. I even would hold my nose and accept some segregated buses or other forms of public transportation. But I cannot accept, I don't think most of us in the diaspora can accept, and more importantly, most Israelis cannot accept a public transportation system that only operates segregated vehicles. This is what Israel will be if the current government passes its laws. But beyond any specific change, by far the most worrisome outcome is that Israel would in fact have a government in which one person holds every lever of power. And again, I hope that no matter where you are on the American political spectrum, we can agree that one person holding all the levers of power is not a positive thing. If we can all agree on this, what can we do? Here are some specific things that you can do. And by the way, in your Pew Bulletin, there is a QR code. You can use that QR code, and it will take you to 3 articles written by Maddie Friedman, Daniel Gordis, and Yossi Klein Halevi. You can read for yourself what they are saying. Here are the things. 1, let's acknowledge that many of the people with the most influence in the current governing coalition in Israel are fundamentalists. We like to call Jewish fundamentalists Orthodox Jews or ultra-Orthodox Jews, but they aren't. They aren't Orthodox Jews. They are many, many, many deeply committed Orthodox Jews who practice a version of Judaism that we don't. They're people of goodwill, people you can have conversations with. But those people aren't Aryeh Deri, Bezalel Smotrich, and Itamar Ben-Gvir. They're fundamentalists. They're fundamentalists who want everyone in Israel to hew to their version of Judaism. The difference between a fundamentalist and every other Jew is that a fundamentalist is not content to practice Judaism as he sees fit. Rather, he insists that every other Jew practice that same form of Judaism. And when we call people like Bezalel Smotrich an Orthodox Jew, we impugn Orthodox Jewry. Number 2, if you are a contributor to the Jewish Federation of Greater Los Angeles, let the leadership of the Federation here know that you're not merely unhappy with the way things are going in Israel, but that you expect the Federation and the Jewish Agency of North America to do everything in its power to stop it. Federations around the country largely oppose these changes and behind the scenes have pushed back. But this is not the time. This is not the time or the issue for backroom lobbying. Since its founding, many in the diaspora and Jewish communities have taken the position that the policies of an Israeli government are the business of the citizens of Israel. I have never accepted that position for reasons I've delineated in other sermons. But does that position now make any sense if those very policies will lead to the destruction of Israel? Number 3, give money to Jewish organizations that fight these changes. In the e-news tomorrow, and again in the QR code in your bulletin, there is a link to the Israeli Religious Action Center, IRAC, as it is commonly known, is our organization that fights against these things. It belongs to the Reform movement. Number 4, visit Israel. Israelis and the Israeli government need to see progressive Jews traveling to Israel. Don't say, I don't agree with them, I'm not going. Go. I realize that all of us have limited vacation time and limited resources, and going to Israel with your discretionary time and money may not be at the top of your list. But the more you see and learn on the ground, the more informed you will be. And I ask you stay tuned for the announcement of the next Temple Judea trip to Israel for adults. But there's one other thing that you must do. You must continue to support Israel. Last week, I spoke of our obligation to be Jewish. Supporting Israel is part of that obligation. I made the point last week that the obligation of being a Jew and being Jewish has nothing to do with whether or not you understand everything about being Jewish or agree with everything about being Jewish. No, being Jewish is about an obligation that transcends you and me and this generation. And supporting Israel is part of that obligation. I support Israel unequivocally. Over the past decades, I have supported Israel whether I have agreed with a particular Israeli government or not. I have never subscribed to the idea that we can't criticize Israel. But regardless of how I felt about this policy or this prime minister or that prime minister, I have never, ever stopped traveling to Israel, giving money to Israel, spending time in Israel, teaching my children about the importance of Israel, and supporting them in their own Israel visits, and taking great pride that all 3 of my children have close and enduring relationships with the state of Israel. As a rabbi and as a Jew, I consider support for Israel a sine qua non of belonging to the Jewish people, and my love for Israel is independent of my support for a specific prime minister or government or policy. As you know, this year we turned the page to 5,784. Of those 5,784 years, Israel has existed for only 75 years. It is true that we have existed as a people for thousands of years without Israel. But I want to be clear, in 2023, if the government of Israel continues on this path, Israel as we know it will cease to exist. I say this not as hyperbole, but as an assessment, as repeating to you the assessment of most people close to the situation. And here is the kicker. Yes, it's true that previously Israel didn't exist and Jews did exist. But that won't be the case if Israel ceases to exist. If Israel ceases to exist, I assure you, sadly, the Jewish people will not be far behind. There is a different path, and that path requires all Jews to fight against the government of Israel to save the state of Israel. Regardless of your position on a two-state solution, or on the settlements, or on the Iran nuclear deal, we all need to come together to oppose these so-called reforms, because if we don't, those other issues won't matter. Even though I despair over the policies of this government, I do not despair about Israel. I still believe that Israel can and will become the kind of country we all want it to be. I believe that this small country, once a distant dream of so many of our people, can still reflect the hopes and dreams of our people, if only, in the words of Theodore Herzl, we will it to be so. I still believe that as long as within our hearts the Jewish soul sings, we can be a free people in our land, the land of Zion and the land of Jerusalem. Amen.
May I ask us to please rise?
On behalf of the team here at Temple Judea, I wish you an easy fast. Your pew bulletin contains the activities for the rest of the day. 3:30, the afternoon service downstairs, 4:30, Yizkor, followed by Ne'ilah. An easy fast, Gemar Tov.